the one who is asked does not know any more about it than the one who is asked. Meaning, I don't know and you don't know. Why asking? Then Jibril responded, then what are its signs? And Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that the slave girl will give birth to her mistress, and that you will see the barefooted ones, the naked and destitute sheep herders, competing with each other in raising tall buildings. Satisfied at this, Jibril walked away. I've heard many analyses of this hadith, and I want to share with you a consensus of everything I've read and listened to in lectures. Personally, I feel that the best explanation was given by Sheikh Yusuf Estes, and this can be found on YouTube. Anybody who can access the internet, just go to YouTube and do a search for Sheikh Yusuf Estes. Of course, listen to all his lectures. He's a brilliant lecturer, and you'll come across this one. First part of this is the slave girl giving birth to her mistress. There are two ways to look at this. One is that the slave will be older than the one she serves, and the other is that the slave will literally be the mother or grandmother of the one that she serves. So we look at this from both ways. Now consider the station of so many women who are hired as domestic help for low wages around the world. Some people that are trafficked to be domestic servants, really slaves. And we see this happening in a lot of countries, unfortunately. Many of these women are middle-aged and elderly and end up serving wealthy young people. So that's one way you can look at it. And we can also consider the nature of children being born lately, within the last decade, 2 decades. I know they're different than when I was a kid, because they scream and shout at the parents, and when the parents give in, there's no thanks or praise. The children literally treat their parents like slaves rather than giving due respect. The second part of this is barefoot, naked, and poor sheep herders will compete with building tall buildings. We all know that the Arab nations are incredibly wealthy today. Dubai, Yemen, Oman, the UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, etc. But realize all of this massive wealth comes from oil. The high demand for petroleum products has only been within the last 150 years. Before that, and even within that time, the early part of that time, all the lands were destitute and actually relied on financial support from other Muslim nations in order to survive. The main trade among Arabs, sheep and goat herding, along with other agricultural efforts. Today, the deserts are spotted with massive buildings which challenge those built in the USA or Europe. Now, let's not forget that the USA was also established by Europeans who struggled as pioneers through the westward expansion, herding sheep and goats and later cows. Great tall buildings. Let's go back to the Arabs. Arabs who name tall buildings after their fathers or families and build them higher than those of competing clans. Now, in the U.S., in cities, there's not a lot of room for horizontal expansion. You can't really stretch the city out, especially New York. It's on an island. You can only go so far. So you have to go up. The only reason you build up is when you have to, because it's more expensive to build up than out. So why, in the desert, when there's plenty of horizontal real estate, is everybody building vertically? It's competition. I agree with Sheikh Yusuf Estes in his assessment. It is really, it seems to me to be very clear. Now, again, Allahu Alam, maybe something else will happen. Maybe that'll happen in another 100 years. They'll say, wow, look at these guys in Africa. They used to herd goats and sheep, and now they have tall buildings. Never know. Never know what will happen. But I have a list here of minor signs of the Day of Judgment that are collected from multiple sound hadith from Imam Muslim, Imam Bukhari, Imam Dawood, At-Tabari, Ahmed, and many others. I tried to track down only those that were really sahih and agreed upon either by Imam Muslim Bukhari or fit the litmus test of Shia scholars, or fit into a litmus test of having two or more other imams agreeing that they're sahih. So they're listed here. I'm going to give them, and they don't really need a lot of explanation. Many of them have already occurred or are happening now, and others have yet to happen. The first sign, well, I'm sorry, they're not in order. I take that back. They're not a first, second, or third sign. These are just, that will happen. And when all of these have been fulfilled, then the major signs will start to come. So, the disappearance of knowledge and the appearance of ignorance. Books and writing will be widespread, and religious knowledge will be low. I think these two go together. If you look at what people had to know to graduate from the 8th grade in the 1880s, there are a great number of people graduating high school that don't know the information that was required for 8th grade. Today, just pick any day. At any given day, 300 books are published in the United States alone, let alone the rest of the world. 300 books every day. But the average person on the street, what do they know about their own religion? Let alone the true religion of Islam. What do people know about their own religion in the world when you have, even though you have 300 books per day published, new books? Going back to the list, adultery and fornication will be prevalent, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, said that this has never happened without new diseases befalling the people that their ancestors had not known. Of course, most people will immediately look to AIDS, HIV, because it was a brand new disease that happened about 30 years ago. Nobody knew about it beforehand. But there are other diseases that are coming out even now that weren't known 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And along with that, fornication becoming widespread among leaders. Consumption of intoxicants will be widespread. Women will outnumber men, eventually 50 to 1. Now, of course, that hasn't happened yet. Killing will become widespread. And I know you're thinking, well, it already is, but it's going to get worse before it gets better. Before the day of judgment comes, it will get worse. Another hadith says, people will beat others with whips like the tails of oxen. The children will be filled with rage. Children will be foul. And I think we can pretty well safely say that children today are angrier and cruder than they were even 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Women will conspire. And again, the hadith just says women will conspire. It doesn't really get any clearer than that. But one hadith that really stuck out to me, though, is it said, rain will become acidic or burning. And we have acid rain. Even here in the Philippines, we have acid rain frequently. Lots of industrialized nations, developing nations, have acid rain as a serious ecological problem. Children of fornication will become widespread or prevalent, meaning that there will be more children from fornication than from legitimate sexual activity. Trust will become a means of making a profit. Gains will be shared only among the rich with no benefit to the poor. And I'm sure we can all agree that that's going on these days. Paying zakah will become a burden, and miserliness will become widespread, and charity is given reluctantly. And miserliness will be thrown into the hearts of people, meaning that people